Hi everyone, welcome to Disruptive Conversations, and today it's going to be you and me. Unfortunately, my guest isn't feeling well today. It happens. This is what life is all about. So we're going to be rescheduling, and today we're going to be covering a really important topic about what we say to ourselves, how we judge ourselves, how we go into situations where things haven't worked out the way that we've wanted to, and our first space is immediately slipping into self-blame. And this is how it goes. And first, I'm going to introduce all of you. Thanks for coming today to Disruptive Conversations with thought leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, authors, educators, psychologists, in which we deep dive into the experiences these women have needed to navigate and conquer in order to have achieved the success personally and professionally up to this point in time. I'm Dr. Risa Reiger, clinical psychologist and expert in change. I help people make positive change at any point in your life, and the good news is that you're never too late. Positive change can happen at any point in your life, and that is through disruption. We need to disrupt a thought, a feeling, a belief, a habit, a behavior in order to create our 10.0 lives. And that's one of the aspects that we're going to be talking today about how easy it is, and it's unconscious and we don't know it, and we're not clear about how we're messaging ourselves about when things don't go right, when things don't go the way that you wanted them to go. Even though you can say to yourself, and this may be the thought can be, what did I do wrong? That's the conscious thought. That may be the first slippery spot that you go into. That may be your reflex. When a situation arises or that has happened and it didn't go the way that you wished it would, that the first question that you have, you go right into it, is what did I do wrong? Now, here's the issue. Behind that question of what did I do wrong is the important messaging that you're having with your brain and to your brain, which is that it's my fault. It's my fault. And that's the space that is problematic. So one is the underlying message to yourself that it's your fault. You're to blame, which is very different. That's a space of blaming and shaming. It is not the space of taking responsibility and of being able to look. That's a very different spot of entry in this kind of situation. So here's what you need to do instead. When you're asking yourself, what did I do wrong? Right? And we'll get to why that's an important question, but not the way that that is asked. One way you can start with yourself is to ask, what happened? So switching from, it's my fault, what did I do wrong, to first asking yourself, what happened? And when you ask yourself what happened, that gives you a different kind of narrative, and one in which you actually will be able to look better and analyze the situation differently so that you can really understand what you might have been able to do differently, where you went off track. And when we go into not the space of what did I do wrong, which also translates to I'm wrong. We use that language actually. I'm wrong. I'm wrong versus I made a wrong decision. I didn't take enough of these different aspects of facets of the situation into account. I'm wrong. And wrong, we know, isn't right. And so when we think that way, we're messaging our brains that way also. And when you're in the space of wrong, that you are, your being is wrong, how do we get out of that? So it's so important to recognize what we're doing here, because when we tell ourselves, what did I do wrong? When we approach other people, and this is also really important for our relationships, of well, what did you do wrong? What did you do wrong? What did you do wrong? And when that's even implied, it's very boxing in. It's not the spot of coming like this forward to be able to look, examine, course correct, and learn for the future. When you start with what happened, that is the space of openness. You're making yourself available. If you're asking this question in relation to someone else, whether it be a spouse, a child, a business colleague, whoever it may be, when you start with what happened, that gives you a path of examination rather than going into some sort of a closed result. It gives you the vantage point, the opportunity, the perspective, which is really essential to be able to analyze and understand. Because you're not unreasonable and you're functioning in the world. You have the wherewithal to do that. So understanding, well, what is it that happened is really your first spot in the most important space of self-accountability and self-empowerment to be able to understand, identify, clarify, and take that with you into the future. So when we go into what happened, then you can ask yourself, well, is there something, what was the process here? How did this come about? And you can look at the varying aspects of it, which is so critical for you. And then you can decide things like, well, was there anything that made sense? What didn't make sense? What is it that I thought was going to happen this way, but then it really happened that way? So you're in the space of past. When you say, what did I do wrong, right? How was this my fault, right? You go from past into the present of what is happening. Let me look at this now. You move to the present, and you're able to then learn from what has happened and be able to take that with you into the future, as in, I want to remember this. I think this is something that I could do better at. This is another way I have to think about it. This is something else I need to remember and examine. And then you're giving yourself your own learning lesson. You're giving yourself your own what you need to take with you from that experience. And I was talking to a woman who's incredibly competent, and she was talking about a situation, and immediately her thoughts went to this was my fault. This was my fault. And it was such a hard spot to get out of, because when you're taking the shame and blame, and you can say it was my fault without the shame and blame, but it has those sorts of nuances to it. Then look at it and say, okay, let's review this. And you take it step by step, and you're being honest and real, and being able to say to yourself, no matter what this is, and if I took the wrong decision, if I went on the wrong path, if I missed this, that I am going to be able to acknowledge this. I'm going to be able to look at it. I have the courage in myself to be able to acknowledge where I misstepped, I made a mistake, I forgot to think about something, and that you're not going to shatter. And oftentimes that's what keeps us stuck in either not seeing, which is one piece, or on the other end of the spectrum, is taking blame and making it all your fault and making yourself all wrong, which also doesn't give you the space of growth. So, things don't go right. First of all, ask yourself what happened. Go through the process with some level of objectivity if you can. And if you can't, just acknowledge to yourself, this is really a tough spot for me. I'm really having a hard time wanting to look at this and looking at this and seeing where I get to, what's mine to own is one of our questions here. What's mine to own? Maybe it's all yours to own. Maybe it's partially yours to own. And even if you do own it, it doesn't mean that every single moment of it has been all of your doing. That's a whole lot of control that you have. But here we go. So you can tell yourself, I made a decision that was. I need to remember to. And take that with you. One of the ways I want to approach this differently is, and you fill in your own blanks. When you are asking yourself these questions, here's what the pieces inside of you, which is so important that you message to yourself. And this oftentimes doesn't come out. When you are messaging to yourself what happened and what do I need to remember, I made a decision that was, here's someone I need to ask about this, whatever all of those pieces are, the secret, the impact, the importance in this is that there's a piece of realistic optimism that you message back to yourself in that this I know, I believe, I feel I can grow, do things, make it better next time, do it differently. Here's how I can tweak this. And there's one more part of it, which is that you can look at it and really review with your heart and soul. And then also say to yourself, even though it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, I really didn't do anything wrong. Because maybe you didn't. When something doesn't turn out the way that you wanted to, it doesn't necessarily mean it's because you did something wrong. Things sometimes just don't work out. We learn from it. We learn where the spots are that we can have impact. If you're planning a vacation and you're going someplace warm and you get there and it's raining and you have looked at all the weather reports, what's the best time to go there? Whatever information that you can have to be able to form your decision. And sometimes it's still going to rain. It's going to be colder than you want it to be. It will be an unexpected something. And it doesn't have to be that it's my fault because I'm less than. Because that's part of what it means. If I was more than, I would have gotten it right. It wouldn't have rained on this vacation. The route that I took and I chose, I couldn't know that there was going to be an accident that was going to tie up traffic. It's not always because we're wrong or that we are less than. Sometimes it's because things happen. And sometimes we do need to learn, and we can always learn. And sometimes we need to learn how to be kinder to ourselves. So, I hope that this gives you something to think about till the next time. Remember that you could do everything right And sometimes it still doesn't turn out the way that you want it to. That doesn't mean you get smaller and more constricted. It means that you help yourself get into the space of learning. You help yourself to get to the space of owning all of who you are. And those are the moments and the spots, the self-talk, the messaging to your brain, the optimism within yourself that things can be different, that you can grow and learn, and that you take yourself with you wherever it is that you go. And taking yourself with you, that's a really good thing. So thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you next week. Hopefully my next guest will be in fine health and will be able to join us. Can't wait to see you next week. And remember, I've saved a seat for you. See you next time.